Hey, this is Cedric Youngelman, your host of the Bitcoin Matrix podcast. Today's episode with Thomas Strolight, which was inspired by his awesome new piece, Yours Truly Bitcoin, written in the voice of the Bitcoin network itself, is brought to you by new sponsor Aupa. Live Untamed with premium meat snacks from Aupa. If you don't believe everything you're told, break the rules, strive for freedom, reach for your peak, and don't follow the mainstream, then you're one of us. We question everything, including what real health is. At the Bitcoin Matrix, I only work with and bring you the best stuff. So I'm really excited to be working with JJ and Rob over at Aupa Premium Meat Bars. 100% pure and natural, handcrafted in small batches. Locally sourced, simple and clean ingredients. Grass-fed beef, butter, and tallow. Small family business, Colorado made. Aupa has 3 incredible flavors: Blueberry Almond, Cranberry Pecan, and the Apex Bar with honey. Use the code MATRIX with the link in the show notes for 10% off your purchase today. Last week, I announced that I'm thrilled to join forces with Peter Dunworth and Andy Patterson at the Bitcoin Advisor, along with the Bitcoin Matrix podcast, to bring you even more incredible insights and support on your Bitcoin journey. At the Bitcoin Advisor, we're helping clients with their multi-sig setup to buy and secure real Bitcoin for decades to come, while ensuring you can sleep at night with the right estate planning and asset protection strategies to make sure that your Bitcoin is safe for you and your family. We're here to help get your Bitcoin off exchanges, simplify the process, address your Bitcoin challenges, and ensure you feel confident every step of the way. If you or someone you know needs help buying Bitcoin and creating a multi-sig vault, we're here to help. Ready to dive in and learn more? Head over to bitcoinadvisor.com/Cedric. This episode is also brought to you by River, the best place to stack your sats and build your Bitcoin wealth. River has 0 fees on recurring orders. All Bitcoin is backed 1-to-1 in multi-sig cold storage. Your Bitcoin is your Bitcoin to withdraw in full at any time. River built and owns their own infrastructure. River also has US phone customer support. This is where the Bitcoiners are going for a new standard in Bitcoin. Buy and build your Bitcoin wealth with a Bitcoin-focused company with a Bitcoin ethos that has been built for generations to come. Use the link in the show notes to get started. Get $5 in Bitcoin when you get started today. Up next, I'm proud to announce new sponsor, Taya. Taya offers unparalleled security. Secure your Bitcoin like never before with 2 of 3 multi-sig directly on your mobile device, ensuring your funds stay safe even if one key is compromised. Shield your assets from key loss, hackers, and exchange mishaps. Easily spread your keys across multiple devices. Durable vaults. Share custody with loved ones for a lasting legacy. The world's simplest Bitcoin multi-sig service with mobile self-custody. Taya is a simple and secure multi-sig vault for Bitcoin self-custody. Download the app on your phone today and go multi-sig to secure your Bitcoin for generations. Your Bitcoin, your control, your freedom. Feel the security, simplicity, and peace of mind with Taya. Join the app waitlist and receive an invite code for the public beta on your mobile device. Hodler's Official is the Team Bitcoin merch and memorabilia company for Bitcoin's biggest fans. Their first Team Bitcoin jersey collection is appropriately named the Genesis Collection, commemorating January 3rd, 2009, the day. Their first Team Bitcoin jersey collection is appropriately named the Genesis Collection, commemorating January 3rd, 2009, the day Satoshi mined the Bitcoin Genesis block, featuring the 09 number on the back with Satoshi on the name bar. This is a limited edition set. Only 2,100 jerseys from this Genesis collection will ever exist. You may have seen them online or at a bunch of Bitcoin conferences this year. Super high quality, sharp design. fits nice and true to size. Great gift idea for your friends and family that love Bitcoin. They also do customs specifically for Bitcoin companies. If you have a Bitcoin company and you are thinking about what to get your staff for Christmas, this is an awesome gift idea. Go to hodlersofficial.com today and get your team Bitcoin gear. Use code MATRIX for 10% off your entire purchase. Every now and then, Tomer Strolight takes on a totally fresh perspective on a subject. For Tomer, attempting to see the world from Bitcoin's perspective is often fun, can be quite challenging, and sometimes also very revealing. Let's enter the Bitcoin matrix with the Bitcoin romantic Tomer Strolight for this dope philosophical conversation and uplifting meditation on why Bitcoin is too good to be false, and Tomer's latest take on what Bitcoin thinks about truth, time, honest money, its purpose, and the human condition.
What is real? How do you define real?
You can't jump into cash. Cash is trash. What do? You get out.
Dear human beings, hi again. It's me, Bitcoin, again. I thought I'd write you a letter. I hope you find it useful, although hope may not be the exact right word for what I intend. But since a lot of people connect me with the human concept of hope, it seems like the most appropriate choice of word for now. You don't truly have it easy, like me. I gather that it isn't easy being human beings, especially when it comes to the matter of truth. The truth of the matter is that being Bitcoin seems quite a bit easier to me than being human. For you, in your world, you have to live with so much uncertainty about what the truth is. That is not true for me. Whenever I see some information that pertains to my world, I just run some calculations and check my records. If things check out, I keep that information. If it doesn't, I discard it. With the information I keep, eventually, I make it a part of my permanent record, a record that can never be forgotten. Poor you, though. You have to hold on to lots of information that you can't verify entirely. You have to either trust that it is true or true enough to be useful, or you have to reject it as false, or even you have to retain it as an uncertainty, an idea whose truth or falsehood status you do not know. You sometimes have to decide how likely these uncertain statements are to be true or to be false. Sometimes that's because you just don't have the tool to determine if they are true or false. Sometimes it is because you are trying to make a prediction about some unpredictable aspect of the future. Me? I never spend time making guesses about the future. I do, however, look at the past, at my past. You may think what I'm about to say is egocentric, but the only things that happened in the past that I concern myself with are things that happened to me in my past and that I have verified are true. I keep a record of these things. Some people call this record my blockchain. Some call it my time chain. Whatever name one calls it by, the only past I can look into is that record. And I remember that record with perfect fidelity all the way back to its very start, the Genesis block. This record of my truth is written down perfectly in many places all over the world. Each copy that is made is mathematically certain to be perfectly, flawlessly identical to each other one. This is because the process of making a copy requires mathematically validating each step in the history of the creation of the record. The slightest change in any spot would cause the validation to break and lead to that copy being rejected from the network that records that history. Someone can construct a different record, but there's no way it would be considered a part of me, a part of Bitcoin. I have my truth, and it is my whole truth, and it consists of nothing but my truth. So when it comes to me testifying, I do not need to take an oath to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I simply cannot tell a lie about my truth. If it's in my record, it is my truth. I'm completely transparent about my past. It's there for all to see and to easily verify. Therefore, in your world, a world that's full of statements which may or may not be true, you can at least verify quickly and with 100% complete certainty whether a statement that someone makes about my past record is true or is false. Where two realms meet, that right there, the fact that I carry a verifiable and incorruptible truth is one of the things that human beings find so useful about me. You live in a realm of uncertainty, a realm where statements can be truths, lies, or even where truth or falsehood cannot be determined. I do not. You live in a realm where the past is not remembered with perfect fidelity, where it is forgotten or distorted or never recorded. I do not. Instead, I exist in a realm of pure truth and perfect recall. I cannot change the nature of the world you live in. Your world will always be filled with uncertainty and forgetfulness. But you can bring me into your world and thereby have an object within your world that is not subject to uncertainty and forgetfulness. And you may find such an object to be extremely valuable in such a world as yours. I am not some otherworldly object, although many people seem to wonder if I am. I exist in your world, but all that uncertainty and the possibility of altering my history, which are so common in your world, are for all intents and purposes eliminated within me. It's as though I come from a world where lies and forgetfulness do not exist. I think this is partly the purpose I was invented to fulfill, to be such an exceptional and extraordinary object. That is at least one reason why so many people are in fact so enamored with me. It is why they view me as so valuable. In a world where records can be falsified or destroyed, the existence of a record that is impervious to such tampering can be used in a variety of applications. An extraordinary object for a universal purpose. Of course, money is absolutely a critical use case for a non-falsifiable, indestructible record. Money is meant to store value over time. It is meant to endure the ravages of time. That which is indestructible and unforgettable, me, endures forever. Money is also meant to be honest. What do I mean by that? First, it is meant to be earned through efforts that others find valuable, and only through efforts that others find valuable. Honest money is money given voluntarily by those who have given it through voluntarily exchange with others. Secondly, which is really just the flip side of the concept of earning, honest money is meant to be spent in exchange for what its owners find valuable. Honest money is money spent without coercion by those who have previously earned it. I make honest money possible precisely because my history is true and cannot be altered. My history is a record of every occurrence of uncoerced spending of the honestly earned money I track. Each record is true. Each record is preserved forever. You might ask, where does honest money originally come from before it enters circulation among people who exchange it voluntarily? In my case, it appears as a result of doing the valuable work of building my record that is perfectly preserved, unaltered, and unalterable. Remember, you exist in a world where tampering with records or making errors in them is commonplace. Making my record tamper-proof actually requires ongoing effort. So the holders of my honest money recognize that it is worth paying for keeping the money honest. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch, after all. This issuance method is itself an honest trade. The new units are themselves earned by work that creates the valuable and unalterable record that stores their history from the moment of their creation until the end of time. I know this purpose of being honest money for human beings is the primary purpose I was created to fulfill. Those entries in my records represent honest money. It is money that cannot be coerced by force. It is money that can only be initially earned by spending energy in a way that is valuable to all the users of that money. We have all the time in the world. My creator wanted for human beings to have honest money. Honesty, truth, is for the ages. He realized that something built for the ages cannot be rushed. Things that are built to last take time, and I am not something to be rushed. It will take time for my purpose to be fully fulfilled, but I have plenty of time. I am not a mortal being. My design actually ensures that I can go on forever. As an entirely new and unique object in the world, I have the luxury of being able to take my time demonstrating to you that I am the best example of honest money that has ever come along. Not only do I have plenty of time, I actually even have my own concept of time. While human philosophers and scientists continue to struggle with precisely defining and understanding what the nature of time is in your universe, in mine, the concept is very clear. It is, in a word, ordering. One thing comes after another. The things which come later in the order occurred later in time. Timekeeping, for me, states that events occur in the block in which they are recorded. So if some of my honest money was spent in one block, it cannot be spent again in a later block. Instead, every time some money is spent, it is recorded as spent, and a new entry is created saying who has earned that amount of money and can now spend it, whenever in the future they choose to. I don't identify the who with a name or social security number, however. I just let anyone create as many identities as they want, for whatever purposes they want. My concept of time is, however, married to yours, because my realm is, after all, within your universe. How do the two connect? These two models of time get married through having you share your concept of time with me. That is, what date and time it is on your clock every time my concept of time advances, that is, whenever a block is added to my record. With your clock time embedded in my block numbers, I use the differences between those times to alter how much computational energy needs to be spent to create new blocks. I make this adjustment to keep the ticking of my time at a relatively steady pace in your world, roughly one tick or block every 10 minutes. When participants in your world increase the energy they dedicate to moving my time forward, this adjustment I make prevents the time between ticks in your world from getting shorter. It keeps those ticks of my time coming at once every 10 minutes of your time. My world and your world thereby stay in sync. Time is money. Money is power. Power is energy. Moreover, I am able to make use of all the energy that is spent on moving my time forward. What do I use this energy for? I use the energy to shield the history of my record. The way that the indestructibility and inalterability of my record is achieved is that it requires impractical amounts of energy to alter the record. The only possible way to alter a record is to spend more energy rewriting my record than has been used to move forward my time since that record was first added. If a record was added a year ago, to change it would require spending more energy within 10 minutes than was spent in that entire year. My record is protected by the true cost of energy. There's better ways to spend energy than in the futile effort of changing my history. It pays more to advance my record than to try to mess with it. Wrapping up. Will you look at the time? I've gone on long enough and should conclude, because I know you haven't got all the time in the world to hear from me. I do hope this letter has helped to bridge the understanding between you and me. I know I am a very unusual object. I provide a service of issuing and maintaining a system of honest money. To do so, I need you humans to provide me with energy and to recognize the value of the honest money. I am the most indestructible and damage-proof object that has ever been invented. I do not wear out, but get stronger with time. The oldest parts of me are, in fact, the most damage-proof. I understand that this can all be quite confusing and overwhelming, so I encourage you to take your time. Don't rush things. I'll be here whenever you need me, telling the truth, preserving it, dealing in honesty for the humans who value that, with unbreakable love and devotion to my purpose. Yours truly, Bitcoin.
Tomer Strolight is editor-in-chief at Swan Bitcoin. Tomer spent 25 years operating businesses in digital media and private equity before turning his attention full-time to Bitcoin. Tomer wrote the book Why Bitcoin, a collection of 27 short articles, each explaining a different facet of this revolutionary new monetary system. Tomer also wrote and narrated the short film Bitcoin is Generational Wealth. He has appeared on many Bitcoin podcasts, including What Bitcoin Did, the Stefan Livera podcast, Bitcoin Rapid Fire, Once Bitten, and many more. Destroying the lies that imprison people. Tomer Strolight, welcome back to the Bitcoin Matrix for, I think, the 5th time. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. I always love doing your show. You give me the opportunity to read pieces out loud and then to discuss them. So it's always a whole lot of fun, and I appreciate the invitation.
I love your pieces, and I read them obviously first, and then I think you read them you embody them, and obviously they're your voice, but not everyone can read their own voice very well, and modify it for the story.
Something remarkable happened when I started to write. I wanted to share my material with other people in the form of writing, but many people were asking for me to read it. And I think when the time came to make the movie, Bitcoin is Generational Wealth, it was originally composed as an article, which when I read it to myself the first time, I said, oh my God, this should be a movie rather than an article. And when we went into record in the studio, my voice just came to life in a way that it didn't before. I used to be quite embarrassed about my voice, but it changed. So something mystical, spiritual happened where I learned how to read and manage my voice in a way that it's soothing and not embarrassing.
It might be a part of growing up. I remember hating my voice when I was a kid, hearing it on answering machines and stuff. It was a little bit higher then, so maybe I had reason to hate it. And I was surprised when I recorded like my first few episodes, and I didn't hate it hearing it back. I also remember watching Bitcoin is Generational Wealth on a roof deck in Miami with you.
Yes.
And that was a great experience because we got to watch it with some people who had never seen it before. And the setting was great. But you'd reached out recently about this piece, Yours Truly Bitcoin. And it spoke to me. And I wanted to have this conversation because the world can always seem dark or light depending on how you're looking at it, but it just seems in general there seems to be a little bit more malaise going into this fall than maybe expected. I don't know, it just seems a little bit more cringe and tense. And it's always interesting to hear from Bitcoin and check in. So
it's nice. I try to channel Bitcoin every now and then. It's the world we're living in is a pretty messy place, as you just pointed out. So it's nice to step through a portal into another universe, into another world that can see our world, but isn't dealing with it in the same way that we have to deal with it. And in particular, I think this phenomenon of how Bitcoin sees the world is really interesting. This is the second piece of at length that I've written where I've tried to channel Bitcoin, and that is what I aim to do in some of these things, and just take the understanding that I have of what it is, and look at it from a very unusual perspective, which is the perspective of the object itself rather than the perceiver of the object. So it's an unusual approach, but I think it offers obviously a different perspective. I think it maybe in some ways offers insights that help different pennies drop in different places for different people, and provide some nice escapism. I think always this, or maybe it's not even escapism, but very fresh perspective and this escape from the day-to-day that we have. Bitcoin is this ongoing process, and it's much more than just simply a computer program. And we don't have a word for it because it's so unique an object. So the word we use is Bitcoin, but that's a very narrow word because it suggests, listen, it's computer money, but it's a
Right.
lot. It's clearly a lot more.
So this is your fifth time on the show. In episode 74, we did Rich or Poor Bitcoiners Have What Money Can't Buy. In 80, Bitcoin is for everyone. In 112, we did Beautiful Bitcoin, and we read other pieces in those as well. And number 156 was Hello, I Am Bitcoin.
Right.
And that was in, I think, May of this year. And
Okay.
do you think Bitcoin is learning about us like incrementally?
Yeah, I think I wrote one really long piece a while ago that's on my Medium that really tried to analyze, well, if Bitcoin is aware, how is it aware and how is it learning? And the piece was called How Bitcoin is Like a Giant Cybernetic Metabrain. And I actually went on a different podcast. I didn't read it because it's so long there, but we discussed that piece there. And the basic point that I make in there is it's got a little bit of brain science in there. It's like your brain is made up of all these things called neurons. They're each one's like a little electrical machine, and each one has the ability to reach out and connect to other neurons, and it has receptors that other neurons can reach out and connect to it. So like your consciousness somehow arises within this connection, but it doesn't exist in one neuron. Right? It's like there's no one master neuron that if I zap that one neuron, Cedric disappears, right? I can take out 10% of your brain and you're still going to be here. And you may forget a few things here or there, but your brain is a very decentralized network of these rather simple things that connect to each other and are connected to and fire off, and they're all kind of firing off all at the same time, sending signals to one another. And that's really what media has become, with human beings replacing the neurons. Twitter, as a great example of the architecture, is you connect to other people and they receive messages from you, and other people connect to you. You follow other people, right? Other people follow you and you follow other people, and you receive messages from them. And you choose to forward some of these messages along, to modify them. You're inspired to create new messages by them. And that's what's going on in a different scale with different things that are communicated, but that's what's going on inside your brain. And so your brain becomes somewhere within that continuous electrical field is your consciousness. And your consciousness isn't some kind of one narrow thing. If you've ever tried to meditate, you'll notice that you can't just focus on your breath. Ideas come in, there's internal dialogue, there's all this kind of stuff going on. Your consciousness is not one thing in one place. It's a messy, sparking chaos. And I think that phenomenon is happening as people in Bitcoin Twitter, if you will, but Bitcoin in general, communicate with each other and share ideas and work towards the growth, survival, health, and happiness of this network, which they are aligned with its success. Your neurons need you to be alive. So they're constantly working together to figure out how to keep you alive, helping you reach out your hand, pick up your drink, put nourishment into your body that keeps the whole thing going. And that's what's happening. Like we've voluntarily joined the giant Bitcoin brain and are helping it think and solve problems so that Bitcoin, the body of Bitcoin, can continue to grow and thrive and succeed. And it's working out pretty well. Like various parts of the brain have figured out how to attract different forms of energy from all over the world and to recruit other people and other resources from all over the world. And you can see that as Bitcoin confronts challenges in the world, it's able to think about how to resolve them. So it's got intelligence. The intelligence comes from us, but it comes from a collection of us working together in a decentralized manner. Nobody's coming from the top down telling us what to do. Just like in your brain, there's no one neuron that's in charge. There's no one person that's in charge. It's like somehow, you survive and think coherently enough to get through most of your challenges. And Bitcoin's doing the same thing, which is why, again, it takes me back to this thing. Like it's so much more than a computer program, right? It's this bigger entity that exists both in cyberspace and in meat space. And we're the meat part of it in meat space, entirely voluntarily, although it's hard to stop. Once you get caught up in it, it's hard to not think hard about it because you see the attractive nature of being a Bitcoiner, of owning Bitcoin, of being a part of Bitcoin. And so once you're in it, you're likely to stay committed to it. You're of course welcome to leave, but very few people choose to. And I think that's another really interesting thing, which is what makes Bitcoin so different from so many other communities that are constantly splitting off and breaking apart. We see so much divisiveness and breakage in this world, whereas Bitcoin is this unifying force. So we can talk about that in another episode.
Well, I want to kind of maybe build on that here, just to riff off what you were saying. I mean, I do feel that the world is incredibly divisive right now, in new and, well, I don't know if they're new in nefarious ways. And so my question is really built around, because you mentioned consciousness, and I'm thinking about our consciousness here, collective or as individuals, and are as modern era people, are we fighting off different maladies, whether it's because of different forms of propaganda or lack of order or whatever it is? Because I feel like Bitcoin's offering us this different kind of remedy. You're not the same old kind of remedy we could have applied before, but it's offering us a new kind of remedy because there are new kind of problems, maybe.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I think part of like what are the new problems? The new problems are that the old systems that were meant to solve old problems have stopped being solutions to the old problems. We grew up in the world where we said democracy is the moral form of government. We see that democracy isn't working anymore. All the checks and balances that were meant to be in place have been overwhelmed and overcome. Our belief that democracies are there to protect rights of minorities and of individuals and groups in general, that belief is no longer powerful and strong. So people are using democracy to oppress other people's rights. Democracy is becoming a dirty word. And it's not that authoritarianism is any better, right? It's not like, oh, if we could only go back to something previous to democracy, we'll have something good again. There's a reason all those systems fell to democracy in the first place, but now democracy is failing us, and so are all the institutions that were erected to provide protection for us. And here comes Bitcoin as an alternative that says, well, I can show you how the separation of powers can be reinstated. I can, not through individuals, not through rulers, but through rules that everyone enforces. You want to separate the legislative from the executive, the laws from the execution of the laws. Bitcoin actually does that, right? Like, you want to change the laws of Bitcoin, you're free to rewrite the code and propose it to everybody. But who executes the instructions? We all do. Everyone who runs the code is the executive. We're all the president of Bitcoin. And by running a node, you execute the code. And of course, what's the judiciary, the third branch of government? Well, that's judging whether an action is legal or not. And we don't wait for people to do an act and then say you broke the law. In Bitcoin, the law is perfectly clear, and every transaction and block that goes through is checked to make sure that it's legal before it goes through. And if it's legal, it goes through without any problem. And if it's not legal, it gets discarded and rejected. And by legal, I don't mean whether some senator approves of it. I mean, does it obey the rules of Bitcoin? So we have this new system of governance that has rules without rulers for the first time. And the rules are very, very hard to change. And they require the consensus of everybody to change, not a majority, or not individuals who can fake a majority, a small group of people who can win over a majority, fool a majority, or pretend to be a majority. It's really fundamentally new approach. And it's the first time we're actually using technology as we look at it today, electronic technology, digital technology, to enforce a constitution that describes how we will interact with one another.
It was interesting where at a certain point in the piece, it says, poor you, though.
Yeah.
And I was thinking a little bit about, it seems like everybody now wants to be a rent seeker, and as a way to make money. And
sure is easier than working, right?
It's easier than working. And we don't live in the fiat matrix. We don't have honest money. And it seems like if maybe your kids are maybe older than mine, but I feel like if you asked a young person today, like a really young person, like, what do you want to be when they grow up? They'd be like, a landlord. Like it wouldn't be building something, it wouldn't be working hard. So I can't help but think that, like people really, and maybe that's why, Bitcoin doesn't, like, around adoption. I think it's hard for people to kind of conceptualize this honest money and the idea of proof of work, because people maybe don't want to work.
Yeah,
And they see work as like a foolish game, a poor man's game,
I think that there's a important division, like work, like if you have to work really hard and you can't even pay the rent, of course it seems smarter to be the rent collector than the hard worker who can barely pay the rent. And that's the reality of the young generation today, right? It's very hard to pay the rent, let alone pay the mortgage and the food bills and everything else, because that's largely because the democracy is broken, the money is broken, democracy and the money have been fused together and corrupted one another in the fiat system. I don't know that it's like some intrinsic or deeply held view. It's people look at the game and they say, well, it's stupid to play the game this way, right? It's smart to play the game that way. But if the rules are different, what we know, it's not this generation. We're all human beings, whatever generation we come from. If the rules of the game are different, you play the rules of the game to win. And if the rules of the game are hard work is rewarded, rent seeking, crying, playing the victim isn't rewarded, then people stop playing the victim card and they start going to work and doing that which is rewarded. And so I think this is where Bitcoin corrects, repairs not just the money, it repairs the incentives, it repairs the productivity, the incentive to be productive in human civilization. And what's so broken about fiat money is in discouraging people from working, creating valuable things, doing things that are valuable for others. Then, like, when people are discouraged from doing that, it is not done. And our civilization starts to crumble before our very eyes, which is exactly what we're seeing happening. In every field, what is being delivered today is of lower quality, if it's even being delivered, than what we were able to deliver in the past. It's because less people are doing real hard work. And it's not to blame the generation, it's to blame the system that punishes hard work, right? Though if you do a lot of hard work, it will be taken and distributed to others, and you won't get the earnings from it. Meanwhile, the people who do the taking do the distributing to themselves. And so the taking, the rent seeking, is what is most rewarded in our society right now. And that's a broken society. That's a corrupt society. And it's a society that inevitably crumbles, because if you don't produce something, then you don't sustain, right? Like if your brain, instead of reaching for healthy nutrients, just said sit around, then you would break down a lot more quickly. So the body of our civilization is really feeling the pain of this silly medicine that we took called fiat, and it's poisoning our civilization. And Bitcoin's the cure.
Yeah, you mentioned, I mean, pain and how Bitcoin is the cure. And the way I think about that is I think there's a lot of pain in civilization, and I try to focus in a way on life that eliminates that or reduces that. But where I try to get my pain from is the pain something I don't want to do, but I have to in a way that so what I mean by that, I never want to spend my sats. I don't think of sats as spending technology. I love the idea of circular economies. We could talk about the Lightning Network. We could talk about medium exchange, all these things at a macro level. Awesome. Yeah. You're not getting my sats, right? I don't have a lot of them, and I'm keeping them. Okay. But, you have vendors who might be Bitcoin, accept Bitcoin, not getting mine, I have sponsors. They want to pay me in Bitcoin, or that's great, but or they want me to pay them in Bitcoin. I don't want to do that. I want to be a part of the circular economy. There's Bitcoin preferred, right? That's awesome. I think it sends a better signal than Bitcoin accepted. Hey, Bitcoin accepted, I'll take anything. Bitcoin preferred is like, I like this stuff, but Bitcoin only, right? So when there's a vendor who has the ability to demand, not because they're being greedy or They just want it like they like, but like I can't get what I want unless I
They want
hand
honest money for
over
their honest work.
honest money for their honest
And
work.
and they've drawn a line.
And that to me is incredibly painful. Like I might be best friends with this person. I might love their work. I still don't want to give you my sats, but if you demand, that's the only way you're going to give me what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I think, obviously you need consumers or retail to have liquidity, but and you need merchants to demand it and the circuit, whatever. But it's really truly for me that pain. That's the kind of pain that gets me excited in the world today. And what I'm finding, we were talking about this before the show, is like when that happens, I'm usually never dissatisfied or let down with the end result of the trade.
Because the only thing you're really going to spend, and Bitcoiners understand that Bitcoiners trying to earn other people's Bitcoin understand that those people won't part with their Bitcoin for some piece of shit product. So like the shirt that you're wearing right now is from a merchant who produces super high quality merchandise. They accept fiat as well, but they accept Bitcoin. And I do think that this is part of what you hear it in the rhetoric that Bitcoiners preach, but you actually see it in the products that Bitcoiners make for each other, right? And everything is made high quality. Everything is made intelligently. Everything is made according to the values that Bitcoin exhibit. And I think, to what you were saying before, that you do not want to spend your sats, it's because you don't feel that they're recognized for the true value that they are. At some point you will say, oh, that thing is, I will trade this marginal sat that I have for that particular thing being worth some number of sats in your head. Right now, you view it as undervalued, and so do so many, which is why we're holding for a very long period of time. That's a really positive thing. Consumers refusing to buy garbage, if garbage is what's being offered, with their hard-earned honest money, is a much better situation to be in than consumers buying garbage with garbage money because they know that the garbage money isn't going to buy as much garbage tomorrow as it buys today. Right? It's so fundamentally different, and you can see these phenomenons in their early days. Like we're living at the tail end of everything being crappy, unfortunately for us, but we're also at the front end of this notion of quality and things being built to last returning. And I think that's part of what is such a crazy good thing about the way that Satoshi invented Bitcoin. Here's something that's built to last forever, and not even wear out. It gets strong, right? Like that Genesis block, it's not going to be that 5,000 years from now, it's kind of worn out. You can't really tell what it once said on it. It'll still, with perfect fidelity, say, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks. And the amount of energy required to erase that will be, all the energy that went into Bitcoin over the last 5,000 years. So it's going to be, here's something that's really high quality and built to last and suited for its purpose. So what an incredible example it is as an inspiration for everything that everybody's going to be working on to earn that money that is indestructible and lasts forever and has great integrity. So it's more than just better money. It's an example.
What flipped this whole thing on its head for me, though, is I don't want to part with my stats for these things, but I will for things I really desire. But then I watched that thing become, aka more expensive in the future, the Bitcoin pizza kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But what really flipped it on its head for me was Ben Justman, the Bitcoin wine guy who makes peony wine. I'm imbibing some of it now. He flipped it on its head where he said, my wine is about to get incredibly cheap right now.
Right.
And what he's saying is, if you're paying me in fiat, I'm watching my unit of account run away.
Right.
And you're getting it on sale. And, he's giving it away. And if he sold it for Bitcoin, that was incredibly cheap at that point because he got way less sats and he'd get, it flips that relationship on its head where they feel slighted too, where they sold it too cheap. I felt I gave it away and now I'm watching that purchasing power be transferred over and they feel the same way in the reverse. It's just a fascinating way of looking at it. And what it brings me to, I loved how in the piece you have these different kind of chapters in the piece and there's the headings and you read them in a way that was perfect. And one of them is we have all the time in the world.
Yeah.
So I kind of I don't know what the word is. I glimpsed it when I read that. I was like, I don't know if I have all the time in the world. And
I know.
I'm a young man, but like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was like, who's the we here, buddy?
The
Bitcoin?
we
Like,
is, yeah,
yeah,
there's
but
two parties.
like,
I think when Bitcoin says that, like Bitcoin has all the time in the world
Mhm.
and humanity has all the time in the world, right? Like there is um there's a lot of time for the human race if it's not out to destroy itself and the planet it lives on, and in fact can prolong itself and the planet that we live on. So I think when Bitcoin says we have all the time in the world, it really is saying you don't get anywhere by rushing, by moving a thing faster than it can, right? You can't rush Bitcoin. You can put all the energy you want into it. It's still going to slow itself down to one block every 10 minutes. So that's just the way it is. And I think you have to make the most of your time rather than rush things. And this is a really different thing, right? Rushing is about not making the most of your time. It's trying to do as much as you possibly can in a little bit of time. But sometimes making the most of your time is not doing the most, but just being present in the moment, enjoying what you have for what it is. Like we live in a time that is what it is. And you can make the most of it, find the very best of it, or you can lament that it isn't as good as it might be someday in the future. And you might try to violently get to where you'd like to be, and that won't work out because you can't rush civilization faster than the pace at which it grows. And if you just lament that it isn't as good as you'd like it to be, you're not really scoring any points for yourself there. Like you have to make the most of what you have. And I think for Bitcoin's perspective is different. Bitcoin has all the time in the world. It's in no hurry. It's delivering a steady set of rules that are good for humanity, whether individual humans recognize it or not. And so it just ticks away slowly and steadily. And it says to humans and humanity at any point in time, in the past, the present, or in the future, don't forget we have all the time in the world.
We do. And I think my children or grandchildren will probably have all the time in the world, maybe literally. We'll see.
Who knows? We'll
Who
see.
knows? Maybe I'm jumping. I thought we'd have flying cars by now too. So,
Yeah.
which is the
Yeah.
cliche. But one thing we don't have today is a lot of order. Maybe
Mm.
in the greater world, I think. I still think, and this is why I love Bitcoin because you and I haven't spoke for 5 or 6 months, and yet we can sync up.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't ascribe fully to this sort of Bitcoin community. There's an ebb and a flow, and I think it's just people who understand honest money, and those people come from all different walks of life. And when this thing just becomes the money, they'll just be like people again, and there won't be a lot in common per se. But it is very interesting how it brings order to our lives, and I think it helps sync us up, as individuals in a certain way, because we
Yeah.
can kind of align around these early values that have kind of been ascribed
Yeah.
to this
Well, it's a social
object.
structure, right? Bitcoin is a social structure that says for all the players who play in this social structure, you can call it a game. I know Gigi has an article of his. Here are the rules. There's 21 million units, each divisible into 100 million units. They enter the game according to this schedule, and they are rewarded to people who do this to earn it. And those people can send it to other people voluntarily in exchange for this, that, the other. So we end up with a game that everybody can play where nobody's in charge, right? It's a fair game. It's like when you play a board game, most of these board games, you don't elect one person to be the leader and they can change the rules of the game as the game goes along. That's democracy. That's the game we're living in, right? You have some rules about who gets to be the leader and who changes the leader, and you try to hope that those things work. But ultimately, even those things break down. You play the game by the rules, and if somebody cheats, you call them out. Here's a game that it's set up in such a way that you can't even cheat. And so when we're all synced up playing the same game, that doesn't make us all the same player. It doesn't make us clones of each other. It doesn't force us to think anything. We can each have different strategies in our lives. And winning the game is not causing someone else to lose this game. It is a very cooperative game. It's the game of civilization, right? And the better civilization is, the better off each individual is. And so a dog eat dog game. It's a, it's not how big a slice of the pie can you get? It's how big a pie can we collectively and continuously create and grow together. And Bitcoin's very clear about that. The rest of the world is not. Right?
Well, the rest of the world is not. And I think the older I get, the harder I think it is to be human. Bitcoin mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
And I think about, just when you mentioned order, I think about Twitter or X. I think about propaganda. And I think on Twitter, you can kind of choose your own order or reality, or have Twitter choose it for you.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, an interesting game in and of itself.
Yeah. I mean, this is more truth. Like order has a couple of different meanings. It means sequence, it means organization. Truth is kind of this very interesting thing. And we're just in this, that was where I started this piece with the truth of the matter, and that the matter of truth is hard for us as humans to come by. It's just, the world is overwhelming. And even when people are being honest, it's hard to get to the truth. There's so much information. It's so hard to distill. The mysteries of the universe haven't all been disclosed to us. It's an arrogant falsehood to think that we figured it all out. And so truth is hard. And then you have incentive systems that encourage people to be untruthful, to trick people into believing falsehoods. And
Right.
and that makes life more difficult, right? And that's why Bitcoin feels sorry for us in this, in the third or fourth chapter paragraph of the piece. Like, wow, that sucks that, you're battling against your own self to know the truth. For me, I just I know what the truth is. I can verify every single thing in my universe. And I do think that is what we find so valuable about Bitcoin. Here is this entity of truth, of truthful record keeping, that cannot tell a lie, that can't be made to tell a lie, that cannot be falsified. It's a really exceptional object. Imagine being able to hold up something that's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, going all the way back to the beginning, which gets longer and longer all the time. It's like, how would you describe that object? It's very bright and very shiny in my eyes, right? And it's like the brightest thing in the world. And I think that's how many people have come to view Bitcoin. And from its perspective, it's like, I know I'm unique in your world. Use me, use me for this unique feature that I have, and benefit if you wish. Bitcoin doesn't force anybody to use it. That was part of the other piece that I read on your show earlier. But it offers itself to anybody.
It made me think of sort of talk therapy. And I have mixed feelings about it. I don't do it as an adult. I went a couple times as a kid, though, and it was beneficial. And so I don't know if I would want to go talk about my problems now with someone. I talk about myself or my wife or anything, but and maybe I'll be able to. I don't know. But as a kid, it was very helpful. I went a couple times, and Elaine Jaslow, she would just call me on my bullshit. And she'd say, "Why are you doing this?" And I'd give her some bullshit answer because I wanted to get through it, and she'd bullshit. And I was like 9. And I feel like Bitcoin is a little bit like that, and like in this piece where it's just like, I can call you guys on what you're doing, and I'm not affected emotionally by it.
Yeah.
And it can't tell a lie, which I found interesting. So it's a form of therapy, but it's also a form of relief, because you're in this world of propaganda, or I feel like we're all in this world and maybe the world's always been propaganda. I'm not saying it's ebbing and flowing, but that's a relief. And beyond just your money or inflation, just having this thing that you can say, we don't have to argue about it. It's
back to home base, right?
About pie, back to home base, right?
It's a safe place. It doesn't tell the truth about everything, but anything that it tells anything about is its truth, right? It won't tell you what the one true religion is. It will tell you what transaction occurred in the most recent block. But that's absolute truth. And it never wavers from it. And you can understand its rules. And so you can go back and just catch your breath over there once again. And you can learn, I think what it teaches us is how to think about things that are truthful, how to verify things that are truthful. Not everything. It's not the same technique. You can't mathematically verify the truth of a statement that I make about whether I like Big Macs more than Whoppers, right? But but it shows us that there are processes for verification, and it does exist as this monument to truth, this fully verified monument that is the collaboration of millions and millions of people over millions and millions of minutes, continuously exchanging truthful information with one another, to build an ever-expanding record of pure truth.
Well, I hate fast food now, but I grew up a Whopper fan. My kid's a McDonald's fan, so I'm probably more exposed to the Big Mac lately.
Yeah.
But I try never to eat that stuff. But what it made me think about is that the Whopper and the Big Mac have changed a lot over the last 15 years, and Bitcoin hasn't at all. So even if you like the Whopper I had 25 years ago is not the Whopper I'm going to get today. I'm reminded that at every Halloween. I don't like to eat this junk candy, but every Halloween I'm reminded that it's not the same stuff I ate as a kid.
And this is going back, right? We've been talking about how things have gotten worse. Like, and that doesn't just mean, oh, the world is a worse place. It's like every single object, like a Big Mac, is worse than what a Big Mac used to be. A Big Mac today, it's the quality of the bread is lousier, the quality of the meat is lousier. Like, just as we've tried to squeeze every penny of profit that we possibly can out of things, and and not been concerned with the quality and pride of what we produce, because the money, and we wanted to spend the money as fast as we could. We wanted to buy as many things as opposed to the quality of things that we were truly after. That changed the culture, and it just drove us towards this, the low quality, high sugar, low nutrient, flimsy, made out of plywood, self-assembled junk that is so inferior to things from 100 years ago or even 1,000 years ago. And we think we live in modern times. We think we live in the best times ever. And in some respects, we have access to things that nobody else had before, which is amazing. But in other respects, everything is blah, right? You're not alive. The quality of the food isn't there. It doesn't make you celebrate. The quality of the music doesn't move your spirit. It doesn't move your soul. The movies are all zombie movies. They aren't uplifting stories of friendship and friends protecting and extending each other's lives and bringing happiness to each other. This is all how we're suffering from lousy money, and Bitcoin changes it. And I think you can already see it in like what you're describing, the products you're talking about buying that are produced by Bitcoiners. You can absolutely see it in how Bitcoiners think about energy in the world, building it for the long term, building it in abundance, building it cost effectively and sustainably. And you're going to start to see it in how Bitcoiners talk about education, how Bitcoiners talk about nutrition. Of course, they spend a lot of time talking about health, and ultimately how Bitcoiners talk about art and culture.
I agree, whatever you said there. And so I want to read I want to reread, you read it, but I want to read a piece, a small piece from yours truly, Bitcoin. The way that the indestructibility and inalterability of my record is achieved is that it requires impractical amounts of energy to alter the record. The only possible way to alter a record is to spend more energy rewriting my record than has been used to move forward my time since that record was first added. If a record was added a year ago, to change it, it would require spending more energy within 10 minutes than was spent in that entire year. My record is protected by the true cost of energy. There's better ways to spend energy than in the futile effort of changing my history. It pays more to advance my record than to try to mess with it. And this piece inspired me to think a lot about the greater world, how chaotic it is, but to think about our inner world and how that we can, how it's, to not spend my energy futilely in a futile way, and to spend my energy in a way that's going to maximize not just the return of that energy, but to create a positive outlook, to recognize that the hand-to-hand life I have in my neighborhood is still fantastic, or I can make it fantastic. I moved from north to south. That for me was really beneficial. For other people, maybe they don't need to move, or maybe if they don't like what's happening, they stay and fight, do whatever is going to make you sort of live the life, your inner life, in a way that's positive, and to interact with people in sort of a calm, collected manner. And I think that's what Bitcoin does, is it sort of like checks you out of this chaos and says, you got this constant, you got this pulse, you got this heartbeat, you could just check into that. And that's home base. And you go out there and you could deal with this chaotic world, and you go back to home. You got a fort. And so you can look at the world as chaotic, or you could just look at the world as perfect and choose to act in a different manner. So that brings me to the next piece I'd love for you to share, which is sovereign yet civilized.
Okay, sure.
And so this is about, for me, making the most out of, what you have now. That's sort of what you talked about earlier.
This is something that I wrote 2 years ago. And I haven't read it anywhere. It was a very short piece. And I think I wrote it, I guess I wrote it at the very height of the hysteria around COVID, at the very height of lockdowns and vaccine mandates and vaccine passports. And well, I'll read it, and then
I feel like we're in a height now too. That's why this piece speaks to me.
So I would
feel
say
like we're in a new height.
The detonation of this thing that continues to blaze out, right? It hasn't stopped exploding around us.
There's been reverberations from that height, that are still echoing, and I think we're reaching a new height. To be honest, or it just feels like it. So I think this. Yeah, I would love for you to read this piece.
Well, let's read this. It's been a long time since I read this piece. So and you just picked it out. So let's see if it still stands the test of time. It was written 2 years ago. Sovereign yet civilized. Today's reality: free or civilized. Choose only one. If you want to live in today's civilization, you must accept the rules laid down by its rulers, even if those rules are unjust. You must use the country's currency, even though it is produced with no effort by and for those who rule the country. So you must work for money that took no work to produce. That makes you a slave. It is unjust. You must pay taxes to the rulers, who don't give you any choice about how much to pay or about what they will provide in return. Taxes on your income, on what you purchase, on gains your investments may have experienced. That is unjust. The things your rulers provide you in exchange for these taxes are not necessarily things you want or things that are good for you. That is unjust. These things include an education system that indoctrinates you while you are only a child to be compliant to the rulers. That is unjust. They may include a healthcare system so caught up in red tape and administrative overhead that it restricts actual healthcare practitioners, doctors, surgeons, nurses, and the like, from giving you the treatment their judgment would lead them to recommend. That is unhealthy. It includes a political system designed to make power-seeking adversaries compete for power by having you believe they are a savior and their political opponent is an evildoer. In so doing, it is a system that divides the population into opposition, fear, hatred, abuse of power, and other highly undesirable effects. That is uncivilized. Yet, what alternative do you have? If you try to live in this civilization and don't use its currency and don't pay its taxes and don't comply with its regulations for the services that it mandates, this civilization's institutions will throw you in jail. So if you want to opt out, you must live in isolation as a hermit, recluse, or survivalist, a troglodyte. At least you had to until now. Bitcoin ends the trade-off. Choose freedom and civilization. Bitcoin offers an escape from the trade-off between a life of isolation or a life of slavery. Bitcoin allows people who would otherwise have to live in isolation to connect with one another and to trade with one another in peace, apart from the currencies that are produced without work by rulers who enslave others and operate freedom-restricting institutions funded by their effortlessly produced money. That's all there is to it, really. Bitcoin cannot be produced without effort, nor can it be seized by force. So sovereign individuals can use it to unite with one another without sacrificing their freedom to any power. Bitcoin is currency for the free people of Earth. A time of transition. We are still in the early days. It is not surprising that you will hear those who benefit from the enslavement of others denounce Bitcoin. It represents an end to their power over everyone an end to their stranglehold on civilization. Bitcoin is a good thing for the billions of people who, through it, will have the freedom to shrug off the chains of slavery and instead embrace the system that is, somewhat ironically, a verifiable chain of rewards paid only and in their entirety to those people who performed the work to create the money. This will take time. However, the time it takes is shortened by how quickly Bitcoin is adopted. And if you want to free yourself, begin using Bitcoin now. Be free and civilized. Buy, earn, or mine Bitcoin. Use it. It is the dawn of a new age, an age of civilized sovereignty.
Wow. I think it still resonates incredibly now.
Yeah,
The
I
way
guess
you
so.
wrote it, you wrote it right up the middle in a way that it tackles the concepts without getting dated. And it even, whatever this was getting at then, if you can make the argument that the whole tide has shifted politically, it still applies in the reverse to the inverse of what we were experiencing in 2021. If, people were kind of maybe mad at Trump and this, that, and the other, and now people are probably mad at the other side in the same way. Or, it's like a pendulum is swung, and this thing still rides right up the middle and applies. And I'm not trying to get into right and left. I just think that it just applies to any, let's call it crisis. And what really stuck out to me, was one, this line, Bitcoin is currency for the free people of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means to me, and I think that's an extremely powerful line. So I think about those first sats I bought, right? And let's say I bought, 500,000 sats or something, right? It's not a lot of money in dollar terms, but I think that you buy $30 a Bitcoin or $100 a Bitcoin or $500 a Bitcoin. Like, what I'm saying is not about how much you have. It's about the concept of currency for being you're now one of the free people on Earth.
Yeah.
And you're saying, okay, I'm not financially out of the system, maybe. And maybe $500 for some people is 100% of their money and they're financially out of the system. But I'm saying, let's say it's not your salary, and let's say you have no savings, but you still make a salary, you still pay, whatever. That's not, maybe a lot of money for some people, or even people, what I'm saying. But you're out of the system, and you have this object that relays to your brain. There's this constant stability. You're not in the Red Queen's race, but you also conceptually grasp.
Like, I think that the point that inspired me to write this article is, like, we live in civilization, but the rulers of our civilization are corrupt. They enslave us. And I there's just no polite way to say it. The taxes are a form of slave. Like, when you have to work and somebody else gets the benefit of your work without doing any work in return, that's theft. And if it's institution, and if you're born into it, if you're born into working for somebody else and not keeping the fruits of your labor, you're born into slavery. And there's just no nice way to say it, right? Like, and so we call ourselves free. We say this is a free country, and there are elements of freedom. But when it comes to the results of our work, we're told that the price of freedom is paying taxes to these people, and that's not legit. And so you have this choice. Like, society doesn't say you have to live in society. It's, you're welcome to go live in the forest and be free, but then you have to surrender the benefits of civilization. And the truth is, those benefits of civilization have been seized by the state. And now, if you want to live in the state, you got to pay the state their protection racket money. And that's what we've got to fix. And that's what Bitcoin is here to gradually fix. So it's a really complicated point, but this was meant to be a simpler, without going into all the details of the organization of politics and government and money and banking and all this kind of stuff. It's just like, look at what's become, right? There's a system that enslaves you, and it wants to persuade you that it's good for your own good to be enslaved. And so it takes over the education system and teaches you from the time you're a little child how good it is to pay your taxes and vote in elections. And that's freedom, right? It teaches you that freedom is slavery, and that slavery is freedom. And it's not, That's just like one example of what's going on here, and that's what we're awakening from. It's amazing to see it all happen.
We brought up a lot there, and I've always seen I think the propaganda in the school systems, and God bless my parents, both were public school teachers their whole lives. They did their best to earn a living and to
I don't think
educate the inner city and as much
teachers
as they
are as
could.
indoctrinated as the rest of us, right?
Yeah, and they were
They don't think
indoctrinated
they're
like the
teaching
rest of them. And
lies.
I get it, but I think like the food. I never thought about this. Maybe I thought about the price of education, but education, the indoctrination, I think, has gotten 10 times worse in the last 10 years. Right. So I think the level of indoctrination that we went through is different than the level of indoctrination that's happening now.
Yeah. And it necessarily needs to, right? Like it gets worse because the system is
sure.
progressively
Yeah, everything gets
deteriorating.
right.
And so eventually you get to this point where the narrative is no longer convincing. And so that's why we all say, holy shit, this isn't education, it's
Right.
indoctrination, because nobody even remotely rational can believe it. But it was what we were being taught was actually wrong.
Right.
It was a slice of history. History is written by the victors. The victors
Right.
were the people who had overtaken the educational system, and it gradually eroded to the point where we're all saying, hold on a second. This doesn't sound legit at all anymore.
Yeah. I mean, when I was growing up, it was kind of like, when was the American Revolution? You had like A was like 1614, B was 1776. Before I moved, actually, my son's old school district, it was like, the government is here to blank, hurt you, help you, block you, and it was like, wow, like that's pretty direct. But what I wanted to get on here, though, was that, like, I see Bitcoin as a shield. And what I mean by that, what I was touching on before, is like, so the current system is slavery, what you were getting at there. But and it's unjust, but where I think Bitcoin brings back civilization is that the slaves have become unjust to each other. And it makes me think of couple of things. So, because we're treating each other like crap now. Right. It's not just there's this like, oh, the owner, the master is treating us like crap, and we're all going to slog away. And it brought me back to, Dieter Bob, he had this tweet, and it's a bit flippant, but it's like, you're not poor because of the Fed and inflation. And what he's saying there, and it's something that appealed to me as a younger person or anybody, is like, hey, whatever the system is, I'm going to figure out how to work this thing. Right. But the system is so unjust that to work at this thing, we have to like be unjust to each other.
Yeah.
Right. You can still get ahead, but you literally have to like slice away your morals or be a corporate spreadsheet jockey and just be dead inside.
That's a system that rewards wickedness and punishes goodness.
Right.
That's an inverted system.
And so it's not even just owner to slave now, it's slave to slave, the injustice, I feel, though.
Well, I think this is a system that is unjust leads to those behaviors, right? Mm-hmm. If a system rewards evil doing and punishes well doing, then you will have a lot of people doing evil, right? And this is why an inverted system makes us rotten to each other. An aligned system that rewards goodness and punishes wickedness encourages people to behave well towards one another. So we need, like, you see how important the system is to the civilization society that arises around it. And when we broke the money, we tend to obsess with this as Bitcoiners, but every time some corruption swung in, every time a system lost its integrity or was intentionally built without integrity, with some inversion in it, it led to our society and our civilization getting worse in time. And it's hard to detect because you don't know exactly where the inversions are, and they take so long to work their way through the system, right? It takes generations for little cracks in the system to lead to the whole system being in a state of collapse. But that's, we're in late stages of it, so we can see how everything's broken and how it got that way over a very long period of time, if we care to study history. And that I think is, that's the issue. That's what this piece is about. The system is inverted. So it's forcing you to have to choose between being civilized and being sovereign. But now you can do both. And and we live in the future we're building if we're building it. So the more enveloped you are in Bitcoin culture and Bitcoin society, the more you can see this, the more you can experience it, and the sooner it becomes a reality for you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think about, kind of almost like as a Bitcoiner, you have life, you're in two streams. You have a foot in each, Bitcoiner stream, and then sort of like the greater, mainstream, normie, secular stream. And you're toggling.
Yeah.
And it's great to be in the Bitcoin stream or the Bitcoin overlay or the Bitcoin matrix. And I love this idea of choosing freedom and civilization. And I think civilization in that mainstream stream is like slipping away. And maybe it's cyclical, but I feel like it's in this destructionary period. But at the same time, you look at Bitcoin and 3 miles from my house now, there is a gas station that accepts Bitcoin on the main net and Bitcoin on Lightning for gas.
Right. That's cool.
And you got to go in and prepay, like cash, right? It's not at the pump, but you go in.
Yeah.
I want $50 in Bitcoin on pump 3,
right.
And whatever else you want to buy in the store. And I love what Bifederal is doing there. And Beef Initiative is coming on as a sponsor. And they're like, we're farmers markets. You can order online with Bitcoin, but they're gonna put a cooler in the store just because you could pay for it in Bitcoin.
Right.
And so you have this civilization in the mind, and it's the currency of free people, but it's and I don't 99.99999% of the world is not operating in Bitcoin, medium exchange, and I don't want to spend it, but this is happening and it's percolating and it's amazing. I mean, it's up the road, and it feels like civilization in a way. Like I have great opportunities to buy beef around here, but I'm like, hey, I can go up the road and get a quick thing, and I'm more inclined to go there now, not because I want to spend my Bitcoin there, and then you could still use fiat there, but because of what's happening, what's building, and what's percolating in the community that's coming together.
It's great watching you, Cedric. Like the ideas that you have are also evolving, right? Like, even within this phone call, I can see that you've had progress from starting. Well, I under no circumstances want to spend my sats to. I want to spend my money with people who want to accept Bitcoin. To ultimately, I'm going to be spending some of my Bitcoin when I think it's worth it to spend it, because I can still spend this garbage money, which I get paid by my enslaving civilization. It's difficult, right? Like, I mean, we all wish we could just snap our fingers and quickly leap to freedom, but building freedom takes time. We're reconstructing freedom in a geography where it once existed and no longer exists. That's different from, you were talking about the study of, America in 1770, like in the 1400s, when people came over to America, there weren't roads, there weren't homes, there wasn't electricity. Like, electricity hadn't been discovered yet, but there was nothing. There was no welcome committee. There was no government to come to. You came to rock. You landed on Plymouth Rock, and there was nobody to greet you there, right? Like that. It was a random place. You could land anywhere that was where you could lay anchor. It took hundreds of years to build America. Right? It'll take some period of time. It won't be a snap of a finger to Bitcoinize our civilization, to reorient our civilization from its inverted state back to an upright state. And there will be people who kick and scream along the way, and there will be people who cheer and celebrate along the way, and there will be people who don't know what's going on, probably the vast majority, looking around saying, well, which is it? Should I choose A or should I choose B? We've seen this play out in the early days in crypto, right? It's like there were people who were choosing the upright civilization, Bitcoin, and there were people who were choosing the inverted, make money off of others by lying to them and cheating to them, the crypto bros. And Bitcoin survived. Like, here's the encouraging and optimistic thing about it. Bitcoin didn't collapse. Bitcoin didn't end. It remained stronger than ever. it's all this bullshit that just collapsed, and more people, I think the people who are standing around saying, I don't know which way to go, will look, and eventually they'll say, look, those people who have these inverted systems one after the other, they all collapse. And unless you're the one doing the cheating, you're the one getting cheated. So watch out for these people who think there's a sucker born every minute. Meanwhile, these people are getting along with each other, these Bitcoiners. They're creating great products for each other. They're being honest with each other. Maybe I'll go over there. It's not for everybody, but I think it's actually for the overwhelming majority of people. And we're so cynical to think that people wouldn't choose that if given the choice. It's only that we haven't had the choice. We've just been born into society where, as children, we were told, no, this system is good, and its inversions were concealed from us. And while they were getting worse than anybody even knew they were. So I have a lot of, I really love humanity. I believe human beings are fundamentally good, but we're temptable. We can make mistakes, and systems that discourage us from being good and encourage us to be bad eventually turn us bad. So that's why I'm so excited about a system that encourages us to be good, rather than just a system that scolds us for not being good. Right? That's part of the gift of Bitcoin.
What I'm really inspired by here, though, is that Bitcoin seems too good to be false.
Right.
And, because I want to imagine a world where the Big Mac and the Whopper get bigger, juicier, hotter, better tasting, healthier.
Yeah.
Right. My kids love shit fast food. And we are on a search for fast food I could tolerate, that they like. And it's all better than Burger King and McDonald's, but it's none of it's good. Right. And even now, you go to the supermarket, I feel like you're in this place where you go to the restaurant and they can't serve you quality ingredients because they cost too much.
Yeah. And
the servers are not happy to be there because they're not getting paid enough. Yeah. And it's a horrible situation to be in the restaurant now. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's exceptions. You don't get to cook. You don't have to clean. It's nice. I'm sure there's people who have tons of money, whatever. But I want to be in a situation where things are getting better, and I want to go back to the restaurant, and I want to spend my money, and I want to earn my money. And I want to imagine that bigger, better world. And I think it is here. So I would love for you to, I would love for you to read this piece. We have time for two more. So
yes. So like a year ago, I wrote a piece called "Bitcoin Too Good to Be False," and I'll just dive into it, and we'll see if it gets us to where you want it to get us. How good can things get? There's a famous saying which goes, "If something sounds too good to be true, it usually is." It is meant as a warning that people make exaggerated claims to the point of falsehood and even deception. However, this saying suggests something more. It implies that there is some maximum to the potential goodness of a thing, and that exceeding that limit is impossible. It suggests that there is a maximum goodness of things in reality, a goodness limit. Any better than the limit, and a thing or a person would be too good to be true. We're all familiar with hard limits in reality. The speed of light is a good example. Einstein and other physicists prove that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. And if the too good to be true saying were adapted to this, it might go, if something appears too fast to be true, it usually is. Goodness is not as straightforward to measure, though, as speed is. Goodness is a quality, not a quantity. Nevertheless, many of us hold some belief that a thing cannot be all good. It is a belief that everything must have a flaw in its goodness, a bad side, a dark side, a catch, some gotcha. Be careful, we think. Nothing is all good. It's understandable that people have arrived at this rule of thumb. After all, we eventually see the dark side of so many things, especially those claiming to be good. Examples abound. Don't be evil declared its founders as the core tenet of Google only to later withdraw the statement completely, while the company profited from many things that could arguably be described as quite evil. And Google is hardly the only corporation to betray promises of goodness, and corporations are hardly the only entities that betray us. And our governments and politicians are never as good as they promise to be. And sadly, most of us experience some form of betrayal from a friend or relative as well. And our machines also break down eventually, or don't work as well as promised. And even our own bodies get sick and age. So because we see that these things have a mix of goodness and badness in them, we generalize that that's just the way all things are. And this leads us to conclude, as a law of the universe, that if a thing sounds too good to be true, the claim must be false. And then along comes Bitcoin. The first time most people hear about Bitcoin, they dismiss it because whatever claim they hear about it sounds impossible. It sounds exactly like that classic too good to be true thing. If you don't like government, then Bitcoin's proponents claim it can't be stopped, controlled, or manipulated by governments. If you don't like inflation, Bitcoin has a limited supply that no one or no thing can inflate. If you don't like theft, Bitcoins cannot be taken by force. If you don't like cheating or manipulation, Bitcoin's rules cannot be broken and can only be changed when everyone agrees. If you don't like rulers and leaders who betray their promises, Bitcoin has no rulers. The list of claims of this nature goes on and on and on. Each one of it on its own sounds too good to be true, let alone the whole long list of them all together. But after hearing these claims, some people do ultimately investigate them more closely. It may be because they want to demonstrate to others or to themselves that the claim is in fact false. It may be that someone they love and trust is making these claims and they want to rescue them from being taken in by exaggerations. Excuse me. Perhaps sometimes, out of some glimmer of hope, it may be that they do wish to see if some miraculous exception to the universal law of the limit of goodness does exist. And when they do investigate these claims closely, boy, oh boy, are they ever in for a shock. Everywhere they look, Bitcoin is good. It is uncompromisingly well built, completely truthful, entirely incorruptible, wholly indestructible, and fully unseizable. Have you heard about Bitcoin's blockchain? What is it, you may ask? It is a history of every Bitcoin transaction ever, which nobody can change, no matter how powerful they are, in which every single transaction is mathematically proven to be valid, not stolen, not counterfeited, not using already spent coins, on which any person can verify every one of these claims for themselves, and where they are strongly encouraged to do so. So check your premises. Does all that sound too good to be true? Well, it is true. And so if Bitcoin sounds too good to be true, but isn't false, that's huge. It means that the law of limited goodness must be false. It means we must revise our view of the world and of how good things can actually be. Scientists once thought the speed of sound could not be exceeded, and then it was. So they had to revise upwards their idea of how fast things could be. And now you must revise upwards your idea of how good things can actually be. How nice is it? How glorious to suddenly break free from the universe that had some limit on how good things could be and suddenly exist in one where that limit is shattered, where there is no limit, where a thing that sounds so good can actually be true. And it's not only inventions like Bitcoin that can be all good in this new universe. People can be too. Look at the inventor of Bitcoin, some mysterious person who never revealed their identity, never acted with any greed, never exploited the system or their knowledge of it. If you haven't heard that story yet, the story of Satoshi Nakamoto, you're in for a true story that itself sounds too good to be true on so many levels, but also turns out to be completely true. Welcome to this new world, then, a world where things can truly be good without limit. What a wonderful world it is. In it, you will see everything in a completely different light and can rediscover goodness all over again, including, most of all, in yourself. Now, freed from the false belief that there is a limit to your goodness, you can welcome the new you, a being with the potential to be all good.
I think this is profound in the sense that in the way that Bitcoin changes you, I think it improves people. I think it takes good people, makes them better, better people makes them great, greater people, greatest, whatever you want to say, or bad people, even better. I think it speaks to the law of attraction. I like how you kind of break through this law of limited goodness so that you can allow the good in.
Mhm.
And I think that if, by taking on sort of the idea of Bitcoin, it just raises everyone's sort of accountability, responsibility, transparency, integrity, which usually leads to excellent results.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, Satoshi does sound too good to be true.
And yet
Um,
he is.
yeah,
That's
but
next time I'm on your show, we'll read The Legendary Treasure of Satoshi Nakamoto, which is what I link to in that article when I say the story of Satoshi sounds too good to be true. It really is it's the most magnificent story because it sounds like a superhero story and with just an incredible climax and an incredible outcome, and yet it's true. So it's not fantasy, it's not fiction, it's reality.
I'll say two things on that. So one is I had Michael Dunworth on the show recently, and we talked about how whether, the government, the NSA, the CIA could be Satoshi. And there's a part of me that's like, wow, it's too good to be true. Like there's no human who could be untraceable.
Yeah,
But the second part that I really love about it is that if Satoshi sounds too good to be true and he's real, well, then you could be too good to be true and be real.
exactly. And
And
and it's not, you can be as good as, like, if he sounds too good to be true and is real, it means he's not too good to be true, but it doesn't mean he's worse than what he is. He is that good, right? And so too can you be, because that can exist. I just think we're there's so much cynicism in our civilization, and then it just says people are weak, people pursue money, power, fame, and they'll corrupt themselves, and they'll trade off their integrity. And it is not necessarily true. You can choose integrity over temptation, and it's not impossible. You may make mistakes in your life, and it's not all over. Then there's redemption by recognizing a mistake, apologizing, making amends if you can, and moving forward in time by acting with integrity. So it's it's not the case that we are, it's a terrible mistake. It's a terrible lie to think that things can't be all good, that they must have some wickedness in them, and that if they claim to be all good, then that can't be true.
I agree. And, I think about, um, too good to be true. I saw Jay-Z in concert once, and I mean, I don't know if the story's true, but he said that he gave his uncle his copy of his demo tape, and so his uncle's thinking about it, like listened to it, and it's like meh. But that it's like the way the story is told is that there's negative connotation bias. Like my little nephew can't be a good rapper. Like everyone's trying to rap. No one is gonna be like my favorite rappers, right? Like so I can't imagine him being good. And I see that a lot with Bitcoiners trying to orange pill people. And someone I saw this on Twitter recently, and they're like, I was trying to orange pill my friend, and they were like, whatever, Bitcoin, all those things that you mentioned about Bitcoin being too good true, and you ran them off in that list. I agree with everything you wrote there. Bitcoin, if you don't like government, then Bitcoin's proponents claim it can't be stopped, controlled, or manipulated by governments. I mean, I agree with this whole list. If you don't like inflation, Bitcoin has a limited supply that no one thing can inflate. If you don't like theft, Bitcoins cannot be taken by force. If you don't like cheating or manipulation, Bitcoin's rules cannot be broken and can only be changed when everyone agrees. If you don't like rulers and leaders who betray their promises, Bitcoin has no rulers. But you tell your friends and families, and they look at you like you're crazy, and it's too good to be true. And they say to themselves, there's no way Tomer found God's greatest gift to humanity in hard money. And I'd rather than admit that he may be onto something here, I'm going to go bet my life on Dogecoin or bet a small stack, because if Tomer's right, I'll always be behind this guy, and he can't be right. I mean, he's Tomer. I've known him since he was 15 years old. He's my buddy. Like, how could he find the future of money before CNBC tells me about it? So I'm going to bet against Tomer. I'm going to go buy Dogecoin and try to get my own Hail Mary. But these things can be too good to true. You can allow Bitcoin into your life and allow it to resonate.
I think the thought process that you described, I wish you didn't personalize it all towards Tomer, but the thought process you described of an individual who doesn't want to look at the thing for what it is because it means that somebody else was right before them.
Yes, because they're the hero in their own journey, right? So
Yeah,
like you can't be the one who told them about the magical thing that's going to save them and their future and their family and for generations.
Well,
They'd have to discover that themselves.
I mean, the problem is in the hero's journey, there's always the teacher, there's always the master, right? The hero learns from. And if you think you can be the hero without learning anything from anybody else, without benefiting from someone who came before you, you're an egomaniacal psychopath. And you're going to be very self-destructive in the process, right? Like we stand on the shoulders of giants. It's been said over and over again. And the giants stand on the shoulders of greater giants, earlier giants. This is
I was getting at how most people don't trade against their future selves. They trade against you. They trade against their peers.
No, but that is what I'm saying. I think these choices that people make they're, first of all, they are choices. They're not necessities, right? Like you can choose to do something different. You can choose wisdom over pettiness or envy, you know, and you can choose to learn it. And the universe rewards people who actually learn, right, rather than act without knowledge, rather than act even against knowledge, and act out of rage. So it's you know. I don't know. I don't really know what more to say about that other than to encourage people to be objective, neutral, and
what I'll say to people I love,
honest.
I'll say, hey, if you think I'm crazy, I'd love for you to do a little research and get me off the wrong track. But if I'm 1% right, you know, you owe it to yourself to figure this out. But I feel like a lot of people, you know, that could be off-putting because it's their hero's journey and they don't recognize maybe someone can give them a tip. But part of that, so Jay-Z was saying, like, don't let anyone rain on your shine.
Yeah.
You know, and if Bitcoin has this, you can verify it, you can validate it, and no one can take that away from you. You're a piece of the puzzle and you're proof of this concept, this mathematical concept that exists. Yeah. And what that brings me to is just, you know, you eloquently put it before when you wrote about proof of work in the sense that in 10 minutes, you'd have to basically reproduce a year's worth of energy to
a year-old block.
A year-old block, right? And that's a very interesting way to express the security of the network and the proof of work involved. So I would love if you know, we could roll out to another one of your pieces.
Yeah.
You know, we explore a lot of conversations here philosophically on the Bitcoin Matrix, and you know, we even explore religion from sort of perspective of, you know, everyone gets to voice their views, and the listener can kind of think about things for themselves, but it is a part of the conversation philosophically about how people either interact with Bitcoin or interact with the world. And it's a very interesting piece here that you've written. I don't think it has to be honest, though, I don't think it has a lot to do with religion per se. And that's why I've noted the subject, but it is called Proof of God, which is similar to proof of work in the sense that, you know, eloquence is the same. But I think that what you're getting into here is of a similar nature and divine. So I'd love for you to read this piece because I think it's inspiring and really, I hope just lets people think about their own power in our civilization and our universe and their interaction with Bitcoin.
All right. Well, I think different people will interpret this differently. Some may view it as a religious piece, some may not.
I don't review it as a religious piece, but it has a religious title, I think. So I just wanted to preface that with.
Yeah, the piece is called Proof of God, and it will not mention Bitcoin directly in any way.
Yeah, and we'll just roll out to this. So
okay, and I just encourage. I'm going to ask you to open your eyes.
But so before all this,
yes,
before we get into this,
you need to sign off the show.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you so much. This has been so dope as usual. I love connecting. We're going to do this one or two more times. I hope two. We already got one on the books. We talked about another one that we could add. I love these conversations. They're enlightening. And, you know, I know you guys are rolling out Swan Vault. and what we're doing at Bitcoin Advisors, I think is gonna. I know VJ and Boya Patti and Peter Dunworth are talking about that. So I think that's great, and I'll let you, kind of let everyone know before you get into this, if you want to let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
Now you gave a big intro at the beginning, and I know you'll put show notes, so I'm not going to plug Tomer. It's Tomer Strolight. Google it, and you can find a bunch of different things. That's that. So I'm going to read this piece. I ask you to close your eyes, and early I ask you to open it. So if you're listening, close your eyes, and I'll ask you to open your eyes in a minute. This piece is called Proof of God. Chapter 1, The Miracles of God, the Creator. You want to see proof of God? Witness then these miracles. Open your eyes. Look around. See existence. See creation. Orderly, beautiful, expansive. Your open eyes alone let you witness the miracle of creation, the miracle of existence itself. Observe that you are aware of it, that consciousness exists, that you are aware of existing, aware of being. Witness the miracle of being aware, aware of being a being, awareness of being alive. Witness the miracle of life. You are no ordinary being. You are a human being, a being with a mind to understand this and to learn so much more. The miracle of understanding. And you can act on this understanding. You have free will, agency. Your fate is not determined. You can act to make your future. Witness the miracle of freedom from determinism. These miracles are all self-evident. They require no proof. Open your eyes, take in what you see, introspect, reach the inevitable conclusions. None of this has to be. Existence itself did not need to exist. Time itself did not need to flow. Order did not need to be. It was created, crafted to perfection through unimaginable work and energy and effort, so that you may live within time and learn to understand some part of it all and choose your actions to determine your journey, to determine the course of your life. 2, the miracle of human creativity. You want to know your purpose on earth? You have been blessed with all these miracles so that you too can create. You are a creation with the capacity to create. In fact, and in truth, to survive, you must create. Creativity is an act that begins with opening your eyes, with learning truths about reality, like the truth that you can take action to change that which is around you. And by learning about reality and rearranging its constituents, you change the world from what it was into what you can make it. You can create a dwelling by rearranging wood and stone to make it exist in actual reality, even though it did not exist in reality until you created it. You can create garments by creating fabrics, which are themselves rearrangements of fibers from cotton balls, sheep's wool, or even silkworm's cocoons, so that you do not have to live in the naked state in which you were created. You can create a fire, a meal, a bed to sleep in, tools to ease your work, philosophy to understand ever more, and art to express your appreciation of it all. Look at you, you powerful, creative being. When you create, you fulfill your purpose. You see your potency, its power, and its limits. The power to understand reality and to change it within the limits of the nature that creation imposes. Your appreciation of your potency, your appreciation of what you created, is all you need to appreciate yourself, to love yourself. 3, co-creation. You are not alone. You are surrounded by other creative beings, other human beings, your neighbors, people who, like you, create, who, like you, can love themselves for it. With your neighbors, you can create much more than you could alone. You can work together, combining each of your creative energies to create what you could not create without one another. You can co-create. Do not forget, it is only with another human being that you have the power to create the greatest creation humans can create, yet another human being, new life, new human life. You yourself are here because other human beings, your parents, acted to create you, and they cared for you. And you also enjoy that which your neighbors from all over the world created and made available to you. Look at how blessed you are to be a free being created by and cared for by God and humans. 4, loving your neighbor. Do you see now why you should love your neighbor? Do you see why you should love him even as you love yourself? Because in love, in cooperation, you can create an even more beautiful rearrangement of reality. This is the proper relationship between all humans: brotherly love, peace, and cooperation, co-creation. 5, in the image of the Creator. To create as the Creator does, for the appreciation of all, is to act in His image. Any creation you create uses His creations. It uses that which has been previously created and is therefore a co-creation with Him. And to co-create with Him is to learn from Him and from nature which He created as your teachers, and to obey the nature He created and to worship it and Him. He wants for you to create with your neighbors, for you are all something He worked so hard to create, with so much effort and creativity. Human beings, a creation capable of creativity itself. 6, your work is your testimony. Your work, your deeds, your creative and co-creative work, the best that you can create, does not need any explanation or any defense. It speaks for itself. It is its own proof. It is the proof that you worked honestly, exercising the gifts God gave you, the miracles of creation, to make something in this world as good as you can make it, made by you and your neighbors, for yourself and for your neighbors, and for the rest of God's creations, and for God Himself. 7, your creations as testimony to God's creative ability. Your creations are themselves your testimony. They are your testament to show God and others how good and creative His creations, human beings, can be. Your creations are a show of your love and skill for creating, the act of creating being the work most in the image of God, the Creator. And your creations prove to all how great is His achievement, that in creating everything in the universe, and in creating you and your neighbors, He created beings who continue in His path of endless creation. 8, judging your work. Whatever your work is, do not judge it in comparison to the work of others. Judge it only on the basis of whether it is your best work. You are not here to better your neighbor. You are here to do your best. And that is all. And that is a lot. And that is sufficient. And that is how nature and the Creator judge it. 9, your neighbor's work. Do not envy your neighbor's skill and achievement. Appreciate it. Creative skill is holy. Praise their creativity. Work with your neighbor in cooperation. Today, your neighbors are everyone everywhere on earth, because through our combined creativity, we have brought all of humanity together. We have created creations that send communication at the speed of light, and created creations that transport ourselves and our other creations over land, by water, and through the air. We are all united by these creations to communicate, to further create, to trade with, and to love one another. 10, Choose love and creation over hate and destruction. So do not hate your neighbor, for in so doing, you miss out on the opportunity to co-create. And worse, you risk becoming involved in the act that is the opposite of creation, the act of destruction. Remember, you are completely free. And so you do not have to fulfill your potential of being creative. With freedom comes responsibility and choice. You have the ability to hate. You have the ability to destroy. You have the ability to lie. You have the ability to steal. These are vices. They are opposites of virtues, the opposites of love, of creativity, of truth-seeking, of generosity, collaboration, and co-creation. But these vices are acts contrary to your purpose and contrary to the purpose of all human beings. So do not succumb to them. You must choose to rid yourself of the vices that lead to viciousness towards your neighbors. You must choose to replace them with virtues through loving your neighbors. Fulfill your purpose to create in love, in peace, for all mankind's glory, for the glory of creation, for the glory of God, the Creator. The end.
Hey, that's a wrap on today's episode of the Bitcoin Matrix podcast with special guest Tomer Strolight. I hope that you found it informative and enlightening. Hit us up. We'd love to hear your feedback. I'd like to thank our sponsors for powering the show: the Bitcoin Advisor, River, Taya, Aupa, Hodler's Official. Please check them out and give them some love. I also want to thank you for tuning in and supporting the show. Keep building, keep stacking, stay laser focused out there, and let's free Ross. This is Cedric. Peace.